So I'll call the meeting to order, and Mr. Coley, would you note that all the commissioners are present? The first order of business is to approve the minutes that were distributed beforehand. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The first official action for today is consideration of Resolution 1431, requesting City Council approval of refunding bond issues for the electric, gas, water, and wastewater divisions, and I'll recognize Gabe.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioners, we have some good news about the potential refinancing of bonds. And I'll introduce Mark Walker, our CFO and Senior Vice President, to give you the information on that refinancing.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mr. Bolus is right. We do have some very good news to begin today's meeting with. We have identified a large number of outstanding bonds that are candidates for refinancing at lower interest rates that we hope will provide some considerable savings in future debt service payments for KUB and its customers. Specifically, we have identified $415 million in bonds that are currently outstanding across all four systems that can be refinanced at lower rates. And based upon the current market environment for interest rates, we're anticipating a savings of just a little north of $69 million. So it is relatively significant. A good portion of that will be in the wastewater division, and I'll show that here in just a moment. But you can see that because of the size of it, it does represent about 36% of our total outstanding debt. So it is a sizable refunding opportunity, and it would be the largest single sale of bonds in KUB's history, and obviously the largest single refinancing as well. So a few more details, providing a summary of the refunding for the various utility divisions, and you can see in total, $419.5 million is what we'd be requesting authority to issue in revenue refunding bonds up to that amount. For electric, it's $87.5 million. For gas, $49.5 million. Water, $41.5 million. And wastewater, $241 million. Now, the proceeds of those bonds would be used to retire existing debt, pay off the outstanding bonds, and to also cover the issuance cost and other professional fees, underwriters' discounts. Namely, you can see that our projected average interest rates on the new bonds compared to our current bonds, and the spreads are relatively large, as you would expect. For electric, it's about 134 basis points, gas and water about 220, wastewater about 140 basis points. So those spreads produce pretty significant savings. In total, $69.3 million is what we're projecting right now. You can see wastewater is the largest at just under $41 million, followed by electric about 11.5, gas about 7.5, and water slightly under $10 million. And then issuance costs, those are the fees that we pay to our bond counsel, our financial advisor, rating agencies, those that facilitate the sale of the bonds. For this, it'll total about $1,122,000 in total. So we will look at each of the four proposed series of bonds required to go system by system in accordance with our debt management policy. Starting with the electric, we are requesting $87.5 million in electric revenue refunding bonds. That would pay off about $86.5 million in existing electric system debt. We are projecting that would produce a savings of about $11.4 million. The chart on the right, the green is our projected debt service with the new refunding bonds, and the blue is the existing debt service. So the delta between the two is basically the projected savings. So you can see we're following basically the same debt profile, just at lower interest cost, and those would be the savings, which total $11.4 million. A key point is with all the refundings, we're not extending the life of the debt. So it's going to mature about the same time, by exactly the same time, fully mature as the debt that's being refunded. That's the case for every system except gas, and I'll show you that here in just a moment. But the bonds will fully mature in July of 2045. Looking at gas, requesting authority to issue up to $49.5 million in gas refunding bonds, provide savings of $7.4 million. And you can see here how the savings, it's a little bit different. What we've actually done is shortened up the maturities on the backside. The bonds being refunded actually fully mature in March of 2035. What we're proposing to do is to move it to March 2033. That provides more of the savings, or a decent portion of the savings, on the backside. And we're proposing to do that to gas because we have more financial flexibility in our long-range plan with gas than we do for our other systems. So we're going to spread the savings out a little bit longer and take off some of the debt on the backside. For water, proposing to issue $41.5 million in water refunding bonds. It'll pay off about $41 million in outstanding water debt. The savings, just under $10 million at $9.9 million, and you can see how that would occur over the life of the bonds. And the refunding bonds would mature in March of 2044. Excuse me. Sounds loud with the microphone. The last refunding series is for wastewater, requesting authority to issue up to $241 million in wastewater refunding bonds. That'll retire $238 million in outstanding debt. And the savings are significant, $40.5 million. And you can see the majority of that is going to be over the first 10 to 12 years. In fact, $23 million of the savings is forecasted in the first 10 years. Now that provides some significant financial flexibility for the wastewater division, which will help in sizing of a future rate increase and sizing of future debt issues as well. So that's really good for wastewater. And then back to the issuance cost, just showing you the detail behind that $1,122,000. And you can see it's broken down by the various parties or firms that assist us in the sale of the bonds, including our financial advisor, bond counsel, and of course the rating agencies. In total, $1,122,000. That represents about 0.3% of the par value of the bonds, which is very good. And so finally, Resolution 1431 submitted for your consideration today. It does request City Council approve the issuance of up to $419.5 million in refunding bonds. The bonds would be secured solely, by the issuing system's revenues, which means that the bonds are issued in the name of the city, so that means the bondholders really have no recourse to the taxation power of the city. That's something City Council is always very interested in hearing. Bonds will be issued on a parity basis with outstanding debt, and because of the electric bonds, the call date for the electric bonds isn't until July 1st, so we'll need to have a brief escrow period for the proceeds of the electric bonds, since it'll be 2 to 3 months before we can actually call them. And that concludes my comments. I'll be happy to answer any questions, but I think you'll agree that this is very good news.
Mark, I have a question. We usually will have bonds issued on a pretty routine basis. Given the interest rate market right now, is there any thought about sort of combining whatever financial needs we have for bonds in 2021 with this reissue?
We will not be issuing that much for FY22. I think it'll be, we have a wastewater bond issue, and also an electric bond issue potentially as well. The key to that is the timing of it, because you have to spend down the proceeds within a certain period of time. We'll probably be back to the market on those late summer, early fall. In part, the electric, the sizing issue is still in flux as to how much we'll need for that, so I wouldn't want to go to the market right now for those bonds, because we really don't know how much that's going to be. I don't anticipate the interest rate environment is going to change that much over time, but that's a good question. And we usually do take that into consideration on that. The other thing to think about is just the size of this issue. One thing I didn't mention is we'll probably sell this over 2 days, because you try to feather that in order to get the best rates that you can, the best true interest cost. So you have to be careful how much you bring to the market at one time for one issuer, but that's a good question.
Question for you. Are the rates that we'll end up paying, that'll be set based on what the buyers bid, right?
Correct.
So we won't know what that is until the day they're sort of put out there and the buyers.
That's right. We will not know what the savings is until we actually sell the bonds.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
And
And that's in July?
No, it'll be probably, one thing I didn't mention is we'll plan on going to City Council on March the 9th. So we'll probably sell over 2 days in late March. Since it is such a large size bond issues, we'll probably sell electric and gas one day, water and wastewater the next day, just to help with the market. But that'll probably be late March.
If the market changes, then we can always delay this or?
Sure, and we've done that before,
Yeah.
several times in the past. Another thing about how it will, the actual rates that we may get, as far as the actual bond rates, the interest rates, will probably be higher than this. What's been happening in the market in the last few years is we get large premiums, and you factor that into your total, what's called your true interest cost. But those premiums, but then we have to resize the debt issue. So what we probably will happen is we'll issue bonds much less than that because of those premiums. But the actual rates may be, you'll have some rates at 5%, 4%. And that's just the way the investment banking houses do it, because they want to have rates that are attractive. So there's demand there, but then they provide the cash up front for us that brings down our total cost in the long run.
Mark, we've been really fortunate with the timing on these bonds that are able to be refinanced in the interest rate environment. With this sizable of an issue, how long do you think it would be, and about what percentage of our portfolio is out there that might come up for refinancing somewhere in the future? Because I'm looking at this and knowing what we've done, and I'm thinking we've pretty much gotten everything that's out there for a while.
You know, it seems like every time we say that, there's another opportunity. And true enough, we do have some bonds. I don't know the magnitude of it,
Okay.
but it's a decent amount that's going to be able to be refinanced in 2022.
Okay, good, thank you.
And one thing that's helped us is on the call dates. We've been shortening those call dates over time. We used to always do a standard 10-year call, but in recent years we've been going 9 and then 8 and then 7, because some of the debt that we're refinancing in this $415 million was actually sold back in 2014, has a 7-year call.
Other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion and a second on Resolution 1431 on first and final reading.
Move for approval?
Second.
Having been moved and seconded, any further discussion? Hearing none, would you call a roll?
Commissioner Askew,
Aye.
Commissioner Caballero, Commissioner Hamilton,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert,
Aye.
Commissioner Simpson Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Small,
Aye.
Commissioner Worden.
Aye.
Resolution 1431 has passed.
I neglected to ask if there's anyone from the public who wants to speak on this motion. Did not get any indication in advance, but, okay, very good. Thank you. The next order of business is Resolution 1432, a resolution authorizing participation in the TVA's electric vehicle charging power rate and amending the existing rate schedules of the electric division to provide for an EVC rate schedule on first reading. Mr. Bowles.
Yes, Commissioners, you remember last month Mike Bowen was here to give you a preview of this rate. He's our Vice President of Utility Advancement. So today he'll get into the details of this rate a little bit and want to get your approval first reading on this new rate. And so, Mike, you have him there.
Thank you, Mr. Bowles. Yeah, it's just been a month, but I've got some articles up here of things that have happened in the past month in the EV space. First, you may recall that General Motors announced by 2035 they will no longer manufacture fossil fuel vehicles. They're going to go all electric. I was reading just earlier today that Ford has announced in their manufacturing in Europe, They're going to go all electric by 2030. More recently, TVA, in coordination with Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, TDEC, announced a plan to install EV fast chargers throughout the state of Tennessee, such that there's an EV fast charger on all major highways within every 50 miles, as a way of making sure the market matures. President Biden has announced his support for EVs, has pledged that 550,000 EV chargers be installed across the United States as part of his presidency, and has continued to make statements supportive of green power, renewables, and electric vehicles. So just in the past month, since I was here, just a lot of talk is going on. So we're right in the thick of things, what we're doing here. I'd remind you that we already have an EV charger rebate program where we provide $400 for residential electric customers that install a level 2 electric charger. We're the first and the only in Tennessee Valley that does that. Today, what I'm going to talk about today is if we pass this on first reading, we will be the first distributor in Tennessee Valley that also has the separate EV charging rate. So we're continuing to try to support electric vehicles and be a little bit of a leader in that space. So just as a reminder, there are 3 basic types of electric vehicle chargers. The first is a level 1 that you would plug into a wall socket over there. It comes with every new vehicle you buy, and you plug that into your vehicle. It takes a long, long time to charge, but it is a way of charging a vehicle. The level 2 charger is a plug that would look like your dryer plug, a 240 plug. If you actually owned an electric vehicle and had it in your house, you'd probably install a level 2 charger in your garage to charge your vehicle. That's, generally speaking, what most people that have one would have and utilize, would be a level 2 charger. And that's actually the one that we provide the rebate for our customers. And then the level 3, also called a fast charger, is more of a public charger for people traveling interstate or long distances, where you're outside the normal range where you could be charging at your house. So if you want to go from here to Memphis, it's very likely that you'd have to hit a public charger, likely a fast charger, somewhere between here and Memphis to recharge your vehicle to make it there. And that's the type of chargers that TVA and TDEC is looking to install every 50 miles as part of their program. So I just wanted to remind you and set the stage for what we're going to talk about today. So you may recall that the public chargers, the fast chargers we talked about, are needed to reduce people's concern that they're going to buy a vehicle, but they can't get more than a certain distance from the house before they got to turn around and go back and recharge. If you know that with confidence that there will be a place you can recharge your car along a trip, then it reduces that worry that you have that you're going to be able to get from here to Memphis. So those public fast chargers are a part of a big solution to help EVs get adopted. TVA, is part of their recent announcement of several supportive EV policies, announced as part of all that a wholesale EV charging power rate. Originally this rate, and I talked about this last month, originally this rate was intended to be only for DC fast chargers. They have clarified that since I was here last. It is now for EV chargers as long as they're above 50 kW, which to some extent says it has to be a fast charger, but it does have some nuances around it that if you had like a fleet of level 2 chargers, it would qualify for this rate as well. So it's a more inclusive type offering that TVA is providing now, and that'll be flowed through our retail rate as well that we'll propose to you. So in order for TVA doing what they did to actually influence the public, it really has to be a retail rate. You know, TVA's wholesale rate allows us to turn around and offer a favorable retail rate to them. So our rate's really a companion to TVA's rate, and without their wholesale rate, we couldn't do this. But what it does is it takes the demand charges that are typically associated with commercial customers, that it measures the peak usage. It takes that away, and they only have to pay based upon the KWH they use. It's a significant savings to this class of customers because of that, and provides a lot of incentives for this industry to fully develop. Our rate schedule was developed in coordination with TVA. We worked long and hard with them. Again, we're the first person adopting, so we got the benefit or pain, depending on how you want to look at it, of working with TVA to get the rate schedule finalized. And we're here today asking you to adopt it. Again, it's for separately metered EV charging stations that have to be above 50 kW. We prepared Resolution 1432 that authorized the adoption of the EV rate schedule that's been provided. It provides for Mr. Bolus and KUB to participate in TVA's wholesale rate program and to sign and do all the documents we need to participate in that program. As a rate schedule, this requires 2 readings. We will be back again in May if you approve today, not in May, in March if you approve today, and it would be effective April 1st. There was one outstanding question from last time. I don't know if you want me to answer that now, or I could answer a little bit later. But
Please do.
okay. Last time you were asking about these fast chargers, sort of what is equivalent costs. An easy answer is fast chargers are almost equivalent to the pricing you'd have to fill up your own car on gasoline, but a little more in-depth. I think it'll make a point here. Your car, just to make round numbers, your car, let's say it makes 25 miles a gallon, and you're going to go 100 miles, it takes 4 gallons. Right now, 4 gallons, let's say it's $2.25 a gallon. That's fairly reasonable right now. That's $9. So it'd take you $9 in that car to go 100 miles. An EV takes about 30 kilowatt hours for 100 miles. Okay, and it varies just like the 25 miles per gallon on your car. So 30 kilowatt hours per 100 miles. On a fast charge station like this, it might cost you roughly 30 cents per kWh. That's roughly $9, which is equivalent to the gasoline cost for the same car. But if you were to take that same car and you would charge it in your garage, it would cost you 9 cents per kWh, and it only cost you $2.70 to charge that car. So fast charge stations are not how EVs are going to get their power. They're going to be powered at home where it's cheaper. And that savings, that $2.70 versus $9, is where all the savings are at for EV chargers, EV owners to reap the benefits of the electric vehicles. So a long explanation, but a way of trying to put it in scale that there is savings there for EV drivers. Public stations are really about making sure they can feel comfortable getting from point A to point B on trips and out-of-town things. It doesn't have to be just a city vehicle. So a lot of explanation. I apologize for that, but
That's helpful. Thank you. That's a great answer for our question last time.
Okay.
Other questions?
So, Mike, let me get this right. So the proposal then is to have stations, the fast charge stations? Is that what we are?
no, what you're voting on is a retail rate that a fast charge station owner, there's a fast charge station down at the Walmart at Walbrook Drive, where the Walmart and Sam's is. There's a fast charge station there. That station would be eligible for a new rate that you're voting
TVA
for,
racing.
that we could offer them, that would lower their costs. And there's another fast charge station that's looking for a location here in Knoxville. It would be applicable to them too.
Okay.
And the idea is that between TVA and TDEC, help funding the building of some of these on every 50-mile sort of basis, plus the lower rates that we are flowing through from TVA, that the two of those things will help, incent the market.
Oh, so my follow-up was gonna be, so TVA and TDEC will build the station, and then we will set the rate schedule for those who are in our territory.
TVA and TDEC really aren't going to be in the business. They're going to be in the business of giving some grants for other people
Well,
to build the
build.
things. Yes, TVA is very, we're not in the business, and nor is TDEC, but they are in the business of helping support through grants the installation of new stations.
Reason why I ask is because I know with the compressed natural gas, like, we own that facility, so I didn't know if we were going to go that same route, and have facilities that we own that then we charge, but this is gonna be different from what we do with compressed natural gas. Okay.
It is. We looked at building one ourselves previously, and that's where the EV rebate charger program came from. We ultimately decided, even with the fast charge station, it takes you 30 minutes to charge, 45 minutes to charge. So you really need facilities for people to use while they're charging, or you may need snacks, you may need a lot of other stuff, and you look a whole lot more like a pilot gas station is what you need, is something like that, which we decided to go and let the EV charger rebate program with our funds. So,
Okay.
thank you for those questions.
Other questions?
Another quick question, Mike.
Sure.
So our margin off of TVA's rate schedule pays to maintain all of our assets and structures and everything. Is our margin off this special EV rate schedule about the same?
It is
as
about
would be
It is about the same. TVA is really the one that's doing 95% of the lift of the savings here. There is a little bit on our side, but it's about the same. And honestly, if a new customer was to come into town, and there is one now looking for a site, we would take our costs for the installation that we'd have to spend, and we compare that to whatever our margin is under this rate schedule or any other rate schedule, compare the difference, and bill them as a contribution in age of construction to make sure that we were kept whole, or all the customers were kept whole as far as our expenses are concerned. So, yeah, it's a little different, but it's always taken into account and how we do a new service business, so it always works out.
Thank you.
Has the schedule been set?
The schedule was mailed out as part of the deal, yes.
Okay. I didn't know if that was depending on what TVA does, but we're actually voting on.
You're actually voting on the rate
set
schedule that'll
Okay.
set the rates.
Very good.
Yes, sir.
Very good. All right. Any other questions? I need a motion on Resolution 1432 on first reading.
So moved.
Celeste,
Second?
seconded. Are there any members of the public who'd like to address the board on this resolution? Okay. Mr. Coley, will you read the roll?
Commissioner Askew.
Aye.
Commissioner Caballero. Commissioner Hamilton. Commissioner Herbert.
Aye.
Commissioner Simpson Brown. Commissioner Small.
Aye.
Commissioner Worden.
Aye.
Resolution 1432 has passed on its first reading.
Very good. Audience participation, appreciate it. Okay, it's time for our president's report.
What did I miss?
Mr. Bowles.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Commissioners, the Water Supply Master Plan is something we've talked about for many years. We're a long way into that project, and we want to give you an update on where we're at with that. Obviously, it's about redundancy and resiliency of our water plant. And there's a lot of projects and steps to that process, so I want to introduce Shane Bragg, manager of our Water Systems Engineering, to give you an update of where that's at in that process.
Thank you, Gabe. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm happy to present an update on the Water Supply Master Plan. A lot of this will be familiar. The Water Supply Master Plan creates 38 million gallons per day of flexible capacity at Mark V. Whitaker Water Treatment Plant. This plan eliminates single points of failure throughout the processes in the system. This would be the treatment processes and some of the mechanical processes that are prone to failure. This improves resiliency and operational flexibility. Let's look at the development and implement of capital project plans. Phase 1 that has been completed included the installation of a 48-inch high service main, and some miscellaneous electrical upgrades throughout the facility. This also included the development of an engineering optimization report that helped us prioritize projects going forward and look at cost options. And this also had some intake improvements that helped us draw from different river elevations. Let's take a deeper dive into the Phase 3 and 2 projects. So shown in blue on the screen, you can see the Phase 2 projects located here and here on the screen, and potential Phase 3 projects shown here and here. The Phase 3 projects, there's still some flexibility in what those projects are. We'll get into that as we move forward in the presentation. Let's take a moment on the slide to do a brief overview of the process train. So we mentioned before the intake structure had some improvements in Phase 1. So from there, the flow path goes to the sedimentation basins in the middle of the screen. You're probably familiar with terms such as rapid mixing, flocculation. Essentially what happens in this process is where the solids settle out from the process. And along the way, there's some chemical processes that happen, pre-disinfection, post-disinfection, coagulation, some of those processes that are a part of that. So from there, the flow pattern goes back to the main building, the 1927 building. This is where 10 filters currently reside. After the flow goes through the filters, it enters through a 1 million gallon clear well in the building and then goes across the facility to the 2 high service clear wells. These clear wells have a combined total of 8 million gallons of capacity. The East Clear Well was completed in 2005 and the West Clear Well was completed in 2011. From there, the high service pump station takes treated high quality drinking water out into the system. Another thing to point out, we mentioned in Phase 1 the addition of a 48-inch high service main that was part of that plan. That main is roughly in this area just south of Riverside Drive. It's currently active. And then another thing to point out is the development of the general shell property, which is another advantage of the water supply master plan. So Phase 2 projects, the projects listed on the screen consist mostly of 2 capital projects. The emergency generator project includes 3 2,500 kilowatt diesel powered generators to produce 52 million gallons per day of capacity. Happy to report that's scheduled for completion this year in the spring. And the filter project is where we'll spend the bulk of our time discussing today. So the filter project, as mentioned before, provides 38 million gallons per day of capacity. This provides resiliency for multiple treatment processes through the plant. 38 million gallons per day is a larger capacity than our current average daily flow of MBW. This is KUB's largest water project ever at an estimated cost of $50 million. This project was unique in the fact that KUB had a contractual relationship with not only engineering design and consultants, but we had a separate group of construction professionals that looked at constructability and value engineering options on the project. Let's take a deeper look into some of that. So the rendering on the screen has quite a bit going on. Let's talk a little bit about that. The building shown houses the new 6 mixed media filters. This is not unlike our existing filters in the building. 20 inches of anthracite coal over 12 inches of sand into an underdrain filter system. This building also includes an intermediate pump station and its associated piping that carry the finished water to the high service clear wells. Let's get into the next 2 items, which is where a bulk of the value engineering and cost saving options occurred. You'll see that there's an elevated backwash storage tank located there. That tank is approximately 75 feet high, 700,000 gallons in capacity. That provides gravity flow for backwash cycles of our filters. The cost saving options here is that eliminated additional pump station, associated piping, associated future electrical use, and future maintenance, so it was a cost savings there. It also reduced the footprint of the building, which caused cost savings for reduction in additional brick and mortar, additional costly deep foundations. The backwash equalization basin, shown here, is a process that acts as a buffer between waste filter water and water that enters our sewer system. So this basically allows a lower solids content and prevents a surge flow into the sewer system. It's an important part of the process. But a more important thing to consider is the cost savings that this introduced into the process as well. There was an opportunity to rehabilitate an existing equalization basin. We were able to eliminate a deep crossing of Williams Creek. And the third-party construction team found some savings opportunities in going with a circular type construction tank versus a square or rectangular tank. And this is just due to the constructability and materials required to construct a circular tank. The overall cost savings of this effort of value engineering saved roughly $3.5 million in the capital portion of it. We'll continue to evaluate the cost savings in the maintenance and electrical use as we move into the future. So I'm happy to report that we're now pencils down on the design. We're moving towards advertising the project in the summer of 2021 with a construction date through 2024.
Quick question,
Yes.
please. I get the water comes in from the river, it goes through the filters to get clean. I'm not clear on what the backwash is.
Sure. So backwash cycles occur. Let's go back to the map here. The current process, you can see an existing backwash tank here, and we have some equalization basins in that part of the process. So roughly 2 times per 12-hour shift, so 4 times in a 24-hour shift, we do backwashes of the filter. It's simply reversing the flow and removing the solids as part of the filter system. Those solids mix in the equalization basins and go to waste. So it allows us to continue to process water with high quality.
Does the water come from the bottom and go back up through it?
It does, and there's an air scour process as part of it.
Cool.
So the way that works is there's the anthracite and coal double layer, and the underdrain system has protective caps that keeps that filter media from draining into the system, and it allows us to have two-way flows.
Cool, thank you.
You're welcome. Great
Shane,
question.
Shane?
Yes.
And I think maybe Gabe, at one point we were talking about a new intake further up or further down. Is that still part of the part of the plan to do that new intake?
Great question. That is part of our considerations, and we'll hit on that in phase 3 of the project. All right. So the original MBW building that contained 6 filters was built in 1927. In 1944, we added 4 additional filters. Now, close to 80 years later, we're looking at adding 6 additional filters. As I look back on the history of the upgrades and the maintenance records over the past 80 years, it's obvious to me what a fine job our fellow KUB employees have done to ensure high-quality, affordable drinking water for the community. When we look at our assets, we realize that life cycle optimization is in life cycle optimization and maintenance with an appropriate balance of capital funding is how we secure ultimate life cycle. The upgrades that were done as part of this process did not address what will be achieved by the Water Supply Master Plan. All filters will be normally in service, which allows extended life of the equipment. It also allows operational flexibility by taking some of the filters down to do maintenance and repairs as necessary. We often look at the new filters project as a plant within a plant. This allows opportunities for our operators to have a control room and a laboratory to efficiently manage the process moving forward. So moving forward, what is next? Phase 3 includes an evaluation team that looks at that engineering optimization report to identify options and cost savings opportunities for projects moving forward. That team has a process of risk assessment that looks at likelihood of failure and consequence of failure for different parts of the process. They review all remaining processes and recommend projects that balance risk and cost. Some of the remaining projects that the team is currently evaluating is aging raw water main infrastructure on the property and some additional miscellaneous electrical upgrades. They also look at the potential of adding a new high service pump station and storage for processed water. And Commissioner Small, as you mentioned, we also are evaluating source water resiliency as part of those options for Phase 3 in that planning period that's shown. And so this concludes my update on the Water Supply Master Plan. I'd be happy to take any additional questions that you have.
Questions? Comments? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Oh, go ahead.
Question.
Yes.
What's, in terms of source water resiliency, what's gonna be the determinant, in terms of if we go with the new intake upriver?
Two parts. One is how, high, cost is a part of that, because if you extend your intake further, it's gonna cost a lot of money probably.
Right.
And then what is your source already? How good is it already? Do you need that second source? We have a very abundant Fort Loudon Lake. The two sources are upstream, obviously where the river branch before it combines. All those things are taken part of the equation. And what is the risk and cost benefit?
Okay.
That's why they're looking at resiliency, because it's not going to be easy to do if we do it. And hence it's the last project on the list for that reason. So we can kind of do more studying about, okay, it's going to cost this, but what do you really get for that, and vice versa.
Okay.
And so it's really that discussion. These other projects we had to do.
Right.
This one's one of those we want to do, or do we want to do, or not do, and what's it going to cost to do that.
Okay.
And part of that analysis, if I understand it, is if you have to decide how far up
Yeah.
you're gonna go, and what are the potential sources of contamination between what we have now and something way down. Is there, really, if there's nothing that's between those two that would likely contaminate, then you don't really pick up much. And of course, we can't anticipate what'll be built in the future in between those two sources.
And Shane mentioned we did do some change to the intake, so now we can draw water from different levels of the river. That was something we didn't have before that worked. So you can go deep, shallow, middle, grade, and that gives you, because some things float, some things sink. And so that project really brought us a lot of resiliency we didn't have before, because we had a gate that was kind of stuck and never moved. And when we fixed that, all of a sudden you have now levels of the river you can draw from depending on what you want. That was a huge plus that we didn't have before. So those things are all part of the equation that we're excited about. So, but that's a great question. It's still to be determined. We got, it's in the 2030s. We might do that, so we've got some time to think about it. But it's part of the study they're doing. Thank you, sir.
That's the floating cow consideration.
Yeah. There's all kinds of things. Commissioners, as you know, Project Help is a big program that supports our low income and people that need help during the winter months. This program has been especially needed this year with COVID and things going on. The campaign just finished up, and I want to recognize Anna Freshour, our lead customer counselor, to give you an update on this year's campaign with Project Help and let you know where it's at. So thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Mr. Bullis, and good afternoon, Commissioners. Today, I'd like to provide you with an update on Project Help, the results of our most recent campaign, and the steps that we took to assist customers during the pandemic. Project Help was started in 1983 as a partnership between KUB and CAC. It provides emergency bill assistance for low-income customers who may be experiencing a crisis such as medical bills, job loss, or a pandemic. And it doesn't just cover electricity and natural gas. It will assist that customer with whatever fuel source they have for heating. So they're eligible to apply no matter what their fuel source is. There are many ways that you can donate to Project Help. As mentioned, we have our annual campaign every January in partnership with Food City and Home Federal. You can also have it as a recurring charge on your monthly bill. So you tell us how much you want to donate each month, that charge is on your bill, and you send it in with your payment every month. We also have several one-time options for donation. You can go on the KUB website, you can mail in a check. We attend several special events each year. Unfortunately, this past year, those events did not happen, but hopefully moving forward, we'll be able to attend those again. We also send out information in the KUB Connection and in bill stuffers several times a year as well. Our annual campaign with Food City and Home Federal just ended a couple weeks ago. I'm excited to announce that we raised in 4 short weeks over $56,000. We could not have done that without Food City and Home Federal, especially their employees, the ones that are on the front lines asking for those donations from their customers. We also could not have done it without our media partners in WIVK, WVLT, and the Knox News. They provide the awareness and the promotion for Project Help during the campaign, and what they do for Project Help is invaluable. Not only was this a record year in the campaign, but donations in general were actually up in 2020. We received our 2 largest donations from a single customer last year towards the end of the year, of a $10,000 donation and a $5,000 donation. And those actually came in the same day, which was really interesting. But I think that just shows the kind of community that we live in, that they saw that our customers saw a need to help their neighbors and continued to donate to Project Help. And without the donations and without all of our partners, over the last 5 years, we would not have been able to assist over 2,400 families. In 2020, we assisted 476 families with over $230,000 in funds used. You can see that the number of families assisted is up over the previous year, and the amount of funds used is actually up over the past several years, which really has to do with the steps that the Project Help Board took to assist customers during this pandemic. So the Project Help Board acted early and often to make sure that what customers needed was available to them. So they acted early by increasing the budget, anticipating a greater need in our community. They also modified eligibility requirements for those applying. So they relaxed the income guidelines in order to serve more families. So typically, for an example, a family of 4, that income guideline is around $53,000, and we increased that and it went up to about $79,000. So that allowed us to serve more families that needed the assistance this past year. We also increased the benefit amount. So typically, the benefit amount for a Project Help family is $400. Or up to $400, I should say. That was increased to up to $500, and it currently sits at up to $1,000. So we saw the need that $400, would help, but there was the need for greater, so we increased that. And then in December of 2020, the Project Help Board saw that there was going to be a gap in some assistance funds available. So when the federal CARES money ended and then the CURE fund was going to begin, there was a gap. And so the Project Help Board stepped in and wanted to make sure that those customers who sought assistance in December, that assistance was available. And we served over 200 families with over 125,000 funds just in the month of December. And the families that we serve can never give their thanks enough. Not only this, we had a Marine Corps veteran who shared that no matter how small or how large that assistance is, every bit is useful. And we receive the same sentiment from every customer who receives Project Help assistance. But not only are we recognized by those who receive it, but we are recognized in the community as a leader. I'm excited to announce that Project Help will be the April 2021 recipient of the B. Moore Award that's presented by East Tennessee PBS in partnership with Home Federal Bank. So this award selects and features community service leaders. Some wonderful organizations have been selected in the past, such as Positively Living, the Knoxville Education Foundation, the Restoration House, lots of agencies, great organizations, and a lot of organizations that we work with in the Customer Counselor Office. So we're excited for that, and the awareness that this will bring to Project HELP, not just for those who might want to donate, but also for those who may need assistance and may not know about Project HELP, because Project HELP will be shared on the daily broadcasting throughout the month of April. So we're looking forward to that and are excited. That is all I have today. Thank you for having me. Do you have any questions?
Hi, Anna, thank you so much.
Yes.
I do have a couple of questions. I know that this program has served people in our community. I was wondering if you have demographic and geographic breakdown of the people that we've served. I'm always interested in knowing what parts of the city and what parts of the community are being served. And I know you wouldn't have that at hand right now, but I'd appreciate that information. Yes. And my other question is, how do we choose our media partners, and are we limited to the partners we have, or is there an opportunity for more partners in that work?
There would be, to increase the number of partners we have. This is just the media partners. It has changed over the years. The television partner has changed. We've been with the WIVIC and Knox News for quite a while. So I wouldn't say we're limited to that. That's with just who we've been for several years. But we have had discussions about looking to expand that and maybe broaden, especially the campaign, to look for other partners in that as well.
Do we then keep track of demographics?
We do, so that would actually be part of the application. So I could probably get that information from CAC.
Okay, thank you.
The gap did the money to fill that gap come from our operating expenses?
No, that was actually part of just the Project HELP budget. So I'll go back
So they took it out of reserves?
Yes, so the last couple years we hadn't spent quite as much, so we had built up some reserves and were able to pull from that to assist.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Well, thank you for the report.
Thank you.
And for the good work.
Yes. Thank you.
Very good. Now it's time for public comments or other business. Is there other business that any of the commissioners would like to bring to the table? Okay. We have 4 persons who have signed up to speak today. I'll remind those who may be new that each of you has 5 minutes to make your comments. There is when there's 1 minute remaining, a yellow light on the podium will come on so that you'll know where you are in your time. And when your time is up, a red light will come on as well. So our first speaker today is Kent Minot.
Well, good morning, Commissioners. It's nice to see you in person after all this time. I'm Kent Minot. I volunteer with the Sierra Club. And my comment is also about vehicle electrification. The new administration in Washington is talking about a major push toward transportation electrification. And as we saw in Mr. Boland's presentation, TVA is as well. Clearly, some large moves are being planned, and KUB should be part of it. I recently commented to the TVA board that their plans to incentivize DC fast chargers on our freeways, and by the way, their excellent informational EV website, might not be enough to achieve the stated goal of 200,000 EVs on Tennessee's roads by 2030. So I asked, what will really help us get there? Well, recently, Plug in America released a report called The Top 25 States Supporting the EV Driver, which I've digitally sent to you all. And in it, it gives a handy measure for the most effective policies. The top 10 states, which do not include Tennessee, all feature generous cash incentives for EV buyers and rate such incentives as the most effective measure to promote adoption. Now, here in Tennessee, the best entity to provide the incentive is a public utility. The most important reason from the utility's point of view is that it builds future revenue. It's a smart business investment. But it's also a great way to fulfill the utility's public service mission, and that's why I'm advocating that KUB provide an incentive modeled after the Charge Up LA program provided by the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. Now, they offer $1,500 for the purchase or lease of a new or used EV. And they include two important features that tailor the incentive to low-income communities and working people. First, well, it covers the purchase of a used EV. And second, it doesn't require the purchaser to be an account holder. Now, that's important because it allows a renter in a multi-unit dwelling that might include utilities in the rent to take advantage of the offer. Now, I'm sending a separate Synapse report, which I've also sent to you digitally, that shows how EV adoption puts a downward pressure on utility rates because the cost of servicing the electricity needs of the cars is lower than the income provided by the purchase of that electricity. This means that the greatest beneficiary of EV adoption is the utility itself. I'm quoting now from what I said to TVA on this subject. You really want to be an EV leader? Show us the money. A $1,500 rebate for every new or used EV registered in your service area would be returned to you in 10 years. Other public utilities are already doing it, and including used EVs in the rebate would make sure low-income Tennesseans are included. It's much more likely to produce the 200,000 EVs in Tennessee than just relying on more chargers, and you'll be benefiting yourselves in the long run. That's my comment. Again, I'm Kent Minot. I volunteer with the Sierra Club. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minot. Thanks for your continuing education of us on the issue. Next speaker is Stephen White. Mr. White, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here, and thank you all for the excellent work that you all do. I've had some time over the past maybe couple months to really just research what KUB is doing outside of just providing the utilities, and I think something that could be most beneficial for City of Knoxville residents as well as those who may be interested in moving to Tennessee is to have an option, maybe provided through KUB's website, to allow people to opt in by providing their email address to get updates regarding many of the things that are listed on the website, such as the sustainability reports. And so I think right now, considering where, I'll just start with Knoxville, where Knoxville is in regards to emergency management. I'm not 100% sure, according to the City of Knoxville or KUB, what either one is intentionally doing to better facilitate the information that's cultivated on each one's individual behalf, or on each one, regarding each one's individual effort. So basically, to just sum up everything, I think that there's an enormous opportunity from an emergency management standpoint, as well as a potential another potential revenue standpoint to allow for people to just basically become more aware of how to manage their situations via, I guess, strategies or specific points. Or I feel like I'm being confusing, and I'm sorry for not really having all of this that much more calculated, but the idea is, how can the City of Knoxville and KUB better work together? Maybe the City of Knoxville or KUB could offer the same webpage on their websites to allow for residents to just say, hey, I want to submit my email address to better get, I mean, I don't really know right now what the City of Knoxville is doing to prepare people for maybe an influx of new residents, considering that in some states such as Texas, they're already having an overload of buyers from, I guess, an influx of new people as well as those who are impacted via the weather. So, number one, I just want to say thank you all for the excellent work that's being done on KUB's behalf, just because I know via the research that I've been doing. And then also, I think if there's a way to better bridge the gap between the city of Knoxville and KUB to provide people with emergency management strategies, it could potentially reduce the risk of businesses not being prepared to provide supplies or resources that could better facilitate, I guess, a harmonious situation in case the weather or the pandemic takes a different type of turn. So thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Sam Brown. Mr. Brown, welcome. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President. Just want to stand and commend you for your action on the previous resolution regarding the electric vehicles. Representing the NAACP, one of our initiatives nationally is taking on the mantle of environmental justice, and this is a step in the right direction. This move will make it more accessible, as Ken said, to low-income families. And I want to caution you that as you begin to market this opportunity, let's implement some zero targeting to make sure that the message gets to everyone who needs to hear it. Let's make sure that we dot every I and cross every T so that everyone who is able to take advantage of this will be able to do so. This region for over a century has led the nation in innovation as it pertains to energy. KUB, a leader in the business of providing energy to people in East Tennessee. This is yet another opportunity for you to hold fast to the mantra of who you are and who you have been, and who we have been as Tennesseans, to be an example to the rest of the nation. We are ahead of the game as it pertains to manufacturing these vehicles. So let us now be ahead of the game as far as taking advantage of their usage and really start to move the needle in our fossil fuel usage and be, as we have always been, the nation at its best. This is yet another opportunity for us to lead, so let us lead. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our final speaker today is Mr. Brady Watson. Welcome, Mr. Watson. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me, and appreciate the opportunity to speak today. So a couple things. I think just the meeting, it's good to see you all in person, obviously, but I know there are lots of folks that might still not be able to come here in person, and I know, previously folks have been able to give comments virtually, and so it seems like that's something that should continue. Because I'm pretty lucky. I get to have a car and I can drive here during the day, but I know there's lots of folks that can't. So I'd encourage you to consider continuing that process. Also, I couldn't help but notice during the beginning of the presentation today that it sounds like you'll all be saving some money on bonds, which is great, up to close to $70 million. And I know that that's not necessarily funds that you have already, but presumably if you had to pay those bonds, you could have. So I would encourage you to maybe consider some of that, investing some of that money in low-income energy efficiency programs that'll help folks, most in need. And I know the pandemic seems to be ebbing a bit, but I know that folks will continue to have that need. And with that, I'm also here to talk about EVs mainly. I know some of you may be familiar with them because of the eccentric billionaire who named his company after a famous inventor. Some of you may also be familiar, given the recent rate developments and announcements by TVA, and I applaud you for approving that rate today, which I think will make a big difference. Yet more of you may know about them from personal experience because you might own one or know someone that does, but I wanted to tell you a little bit about why I think they're good and why you all should support them. So I think first of all, they're fun to drive. they don't have transmissions or tons of moving parts like traditional, internal combustion engines do. And so that power is delivered to the wheels right away, which means there's no need to shift gears. And there's also almost no maintenance required because they don't have all those parts to deal with. So that immediate power to the wheels means they accelerate really quickly, which can be fun. Of course, you got to keep it below the speed limit, which can be hard sometimes. But second of all, they're cleaner and better for the environment because they don't have any emissions that typical gasoline-powered cars do, which can cause pollution and contribute to the climate crisis. So that's another win. And lastly, they don't require dirty fossil fuels to fill up the tank either. So, and you can fill up at home, as Mr. Bowen was saying earlier, you can plug in your car and charge from home. So, like anything else, there are of course drawbacks. Namely, we don't yet have the infrastructure to facilitate kind of widespread adoption, but thanks to you and TVA, that seems to be picking up. And of course, if you own a Tesla, you might be lucky enough they have a lot more chargers, but that's not everyone. So I still think that the benefits outweigh those drawbacks, and I know that we all can work together, again, through you all and TVA to increase that charging infrastructure and make it more accessible to folks. But as Kent mentioned, what's really key to EV adoption is offering incentives for folks to buy them, because right now they are a little bit more expensive than gas-powered cars, but it's been proven that states and cities that offer incentives have much higher adoption rates than states that do not. And of course, that stands to reason. If you offer folks an incentive to buy something, they're going to be more likely to do so. But also, as been pointed out, you might give a rebate, but you're going to make that money back because people are then going to be charging their vehicles on your system. So that's a win-win, in my opinion. I mentioned, like I said, the one barrier that stops folks from buying EVs is definitely that price point and also the range anxiety, which Mr. Bowen also spoke about. But we know they're cheaper to own long-term because, again, those fuel costs are relatively low and there's relatively no maintenance costs. So they're really beneficial for folks in that regard. And KUB has already offered rebates for folks to install chargers at their homes, which is great. And I would encourage you, as Kent did, to consider rebates for folks to buy new or used EVs. And it would really help a lot of low-income folks and communities better afford EVs. And these are folks that are also often most impacted by pollution in the first place. So offering a rebate can help them transition to cleaner transportation and live healthier lives in their communities. And so I strongly hope you'll consider adopting a cash rebate for customers who purchase a new or used EV, and in doing so, help us transition to a cleaner, more affordable, and more equitable transportation future for all Knoxvillians. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, following the adjournment of this meeting, the board will have a lunch session that's open for the public to observe. Is there any further business? If not, the meeting is adjourned.